Manana si Zeus, Imina 35 na Slaturan Guahan is back from recess. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, when we left yesterday afternoon, we were in motions, and at this time, I'm going to recognize Senator Marsh Taichino. You are recognized.
Sedus Maasi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place from the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs the appointment of Ina Carrillo to serve as Station Manager for the Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation, also known as KGTF/PBS Guam, with the recommendation to do confirm on the session agenda.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator Marsh Taichino, you are still recognized.
Madam Speaker, on your behalf, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Juan K. Calvo to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission on the session agenda.
On the nomination to place Juan K. Calvo to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission on session agenda, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator Marsh Taichino, you are still recognized.
Madam Speaker, on your behalf, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Priscilla T. Tuncap to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission on the session agenda.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the motion to place the nomination of Priscilla T. Tuncap to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission on session agenda, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay. We are now on legislative Senator Therese Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning. I would like to move to place Bill number 66-35 COR as it's an act to amend Section 2912P of Article 9, Chapter 2, Division 1, Title 10, Guam Code annotated relative to increasing the age qualification and insurance cap amount for the treatment of autism spectrum disorder. This bill's been received by the Committee on Rules.
Yes, Senator, I do have, is there a point of information or inquiry, Senator Regine?
Yes, it's just Maase, Madam Speaker, and good morning. Bill number 66 has been received with the Committee on Rules and is still in core review, so it's not, it hasn't been approved, and I don't believe it's up online yet.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Therese, I will accept your motion at a later date.
All right.
Just wanting to make sure that the committee report is submitted first based on the standing rules.
All right, thank you,
Senator.
Madam Speaker,
I
and
appreciate
we'll
it.
wait for that.
Thank you. Senator Legislative Secretary Shelton, you are recognized.
Hafaday, good morning, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I'd like to move for the appointment of Leslie Ann Leon Guerrero to the Board of Regents of the University of Guam to be placed on the session agenda.
On that motion to place Leslie Leon Guerrero, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Shelton, you are still recognized.
Siduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd also like to move for the appointment of Deborah Bellinger to serve as a trustee of the Guam Community College Board on the session agenda.
On that motion for Deborah Bellinger to serve on the Guam
Community College Board of
Community
Trustees.
College Board of Trustees, are there any objections to be placed on the session agenda? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator
Siduous Masi.
Shelton, you're still, okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? We are now still on legislative concurrences. At this time, Senator Pito Terlahi on the nomination of Samantha Brennan, please. Consigi put for vote.
Good morning, Madam Speaker.
Manana si Zeus.
Manana si Zeus Maasi. I move to place from the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council of Guam Infrastructure, and Public Transit, the nomination of Samantha Brennan to serve as the Director of the Department of Correction in the voting file.
With the recommendation, sir, to confirm?
With the recommendation to confirm.
On that motion, Senator Lee, do you have a point of information, Senator? Thank you. Senator Terlahi, there is a motion. Do you have a point of information?
Just a point of order, Madam Speaker. Are we under motions putting these things on the agenda, or are we moving them?
No, I said we're on
from
legislative
concurrence
concurrences to the voting file.
Voting file?
Yes, addressing the oversight chairs on each committee to place it on the voting, to the third reading. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. On the, from the committee, Senator Sabina Perez, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker. I move
Madam
to place from the Committee on Environment, Revenue, Taxation, and Procurement the nomination of Margaret J. Denny to serve as a member of the Guam Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors on the voting file.
With the recommendation
To confirm.
to confirm. On that motion, ladies and gentlemen, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Sabina, any? Oh, Senator Clint Rigel.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion, notwithstanding the House rules, to place the nomination of Siska S. Hutapea
Yeah.
as a member of the Board of Directors of the Guam Economic Development Authority on the session agenda.
Senator Clint, I will go ahead and go back and do a notwithstanding the motions after the concurrence, but just for now, out of order, before, so I will go ahead and entertain that at a later time.
Thank you,
We are
Madam
in
Speaker.
legislative concurrence right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Rigel. We're still in legislative concurrence from the Committee of Government Operations on Housing. Can I have Majority Leader Vice Speaker Nelson, can you move the nomination for Senator San Agustin on Sabino Flores? From the Committee on General Operations, Appropriations, and Housing.
Madam Speaker, from the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, I'd like to place Sabino P. Flores to serve as a member of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners with a recommendation to do confirm.
Si Juas Masi, Vice Speaker, Majority Leader. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Pito Terlahi, on the motion for Ignacio Paredo, please.
Madam Speaker, Sizus Masi, Manana Sizus. I move to place from the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, the Mayor's Council of Guam Infrastructure and Public Transit, the nomination of Ignacio Paredo to serve as Director of Custom and Quarantine in the voting file with the recommendation to confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Si Juas Masi, Senator Pito. Vice Chair, Assistant Majority Leader, Senator March Tachino, you're recognized to assist for Julie Kanata.
Si Juas Masi. Madam Speaker, I move to place from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Julie I. Kanata to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission in the voting file.
On that motion, with the recommendation of confirm, hearing no objections, Motion carries. At this time, I would recognize Senator San Augustine.
Madam Speaker, I move to place from the Committee on General Government Appropriation and Housing, the nomination of Lanita B. Tiong to serve as a member of the Guam Housing Corporation Board of Directors in the voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Marsh Taitsino for Ina Carrillo, please proceed.
Sijus Maasi, Madam Speaker. I move to place from the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs the nomination of Ina V. Carrillo to serve as Station Manager of the Guam Education Telecommunication Corporation, also known as KGTF/PBS Guam, in the voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Marsh Taitsino, I'll still recognize you as the Vice Chair for Juan Cabo.
Madam Speaker, I move to place from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Juan K. Calvo to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission in the voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator Marsh Taitsino, please, for Priscilla Tuncap.
Madam Speaker, I move to place from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, and the Guam Buildup the nomination of Priscilla T. Tuncap to serve as the member of the Civil Service Commission in the voting file.
On the motion for Priscilla T. Tuncap to be placed in the voting file as member of the Civil Service Commission, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. I moved it away. Yes. Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move for the appointment of Leslie Ann Leon Guerrero to the University of Guam Board of Regents to be moved into the voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? No objections? Motion carries. She had already moved it, Senator Chulai. Senator Shelton, you are still recognized.
I'd also like to move for the appointment of Deborah Bellinger for the Guam Community College Board of Trustees to be moved to the voting file.
On that motion for Deborah Bellinger to the Guam Community Colleges Board of Directors, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, request that we move back the motion.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries, Senator. God bless you. Senator Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, request that Lester C. Carlson, a nomination to Director...
Senator, if I may, can you just do the notwithstanding provision first before you put him on the agenda? No, just say it. Notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding the House rules, to place Lester C. Carlson, the nominee director for BBMR, to serve at the pleasure of the governor in the third reading file.
Session agenda first, please, Senator San Augustine.
Yes.
Please say it for session.
Onto the session agenda.
On that motion for Lester Carlson, hearing no objections, motion carries.
Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I ask that Joseph A. Cameron, nominee member for the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners, term of 5 years, be placed on the session agenda.
On
Third reading.
On that motion for Joseph Cameron to serve as a member for the Guam Urban Renewal Authority Board of Directors or Commissioners. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator Clint Rigel, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that from the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy Utilities and Emergency Response, the nomination of Siska S. Hutapia as a member of the Board of Directors, Guam Economic Development Authority, be placed on the session agenda.
With the recommendation to do confirm.
With the recommendation to confirm.
On that motion for Siska Hutapia, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, to place it on the third reading voting file, can you, for both your nominees? So Senator Pito Talahi, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Just stay here until he's finished.
Notwithstanding the House rule, I move from the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure, Public Transit, hereby reports out to place Esther Agigi, the Adjutant General, on the session agenda. With the recommendation to
Confirm.
confirm.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion carries. Vice Speaker, Majority Leader Nelson, Senator Talina Nelson, in the interest of time, I'm just going to ask you, based on all the nominations that were put on the agenda just now, if you can do, I was cleared by the clerk that we can do once motion to put all those that were just placed on the agenda down into the third reading. If you can do that oral motion, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Vice Speaker, Majority Leader Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move those that are in the second reading file into the third reading that we have just placed onto the session agenda. Thank you.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we are now in the second reading file. At this time, I will entertain the author, Senator Regine Bisco Lee, on Bill number 1-35LS.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 1-35LS on the third reading file and be afforded the opportunity to discuss it.
Senator, if I may, please, if you can go ahead and read the bill as amended by the committee, read that, and then read the bill.
Certainly, Madam Speaker. This is Bill 1-35LS, an act to add a new subsection 26203.2 to Article 2, Chapter 26, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to providing limited exceptions to small businesses under the Dave Santos Small Business Enhancement Act,
And
as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing.
Yes, Senator Lee, thank you very much for that motion. On the main motion, you may proceed.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues who have co-sponsored this piece of legislation in support of our island's small businesses. That's you, Madam Speaker, Senator James Moylan, Senator Joe San Agustin. In addition, I'd like to thank the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration and our experts at BBMR for their continued collaboration and cooperation. I'd also like to thank our experts at GITA, with whom we've consulted to ensure that Bill number 1-35LS did not violate our bond covenants. Bill number 1-35LS, as amended, is the result of the committed work of our experts and partners, people who went back to the drawing board and found a way that works. Under Bill 1 as amended, the Dave Santos Act would remain the same. And I'll repeat that. The Dave Santos Act will remain the same. But any business making between $50,000 and $250,000 a year will pay a business privilege tax BPT rate of 3% on the first $50,000 earned instead of the 5% presently required by law. This raises a fundamental question, Madam Speaker. According to the revised fiscal note by BBMR, every small business who qualifies for this new rate would essentially save about $1,000 a year. Madam Speaker, the fundamental question before us today, who can best put that money to work? Bill 1 says that small business owners should be able to decide for themselves. A new piece of equipment, a salary increase to a valued employee, or the completion of improvement projects. Madam Speaker, small businesses are at the core of our island's economy. With this money, small business owners can spend more for their businesses, all in all contributing to the growth of our economy. We have heard from small and micro businesses. Some of those are involved in the Guam UNIS Merchandise and Arts Program, which is a business training and incubator program that supports local artists and cultural producers. And although data for our small businesses are not readily available, the Small Business Administration tells us that small businesses contribute to 65% of all new job growth in our country. And yet 50% of these businesses fail within the first 5 years of operation. Bill number 1 allows small and micro businesses to keep more of the dollars and cents that they earn because, quite frankly, business is hard. And being a small and micro business is even harder. Bill number 1 helps our businesses to succeed, to provide them the means to avoid being just another SBA statistic. Madam Speaker, in these austere times, I know some of us are concerned about the cost of this measure to government. According to the revised fiscal note from BBMR, we know that 2,200 businesses make between $50,000 and $250,000 respectively, and that we should expect a loss of $2.2 million should this piece of legislation be enacted. While recognizing the budget impacts of this proposal in context are vital, we have no clear metric to determine the economic benefit of small businesses and small business owners spending more of their own money in the free market. Indeed, it's important to provide the financial and budgetary analysis to compare the benefits and costs to government. However, it's even more important to provide the economic analysis to this issue. While a fiscal note may tell us what it will cost, that same note does not tell us what we will gain when hundreds of businesses breathe a little easier or grow in economic confidence. The projected loss of $2.2 million to Guam would be spent by small businesses in our economy. Simple economics tells us that when businesses have more money to spend, they do so in our economy, generating more dollars and contributing more growth and more jobs. Small businesses don't hoard their money in the Cayman Islands. They spend it right here on Guam. And that's why investing in these businesses makes sense. Madam Speaker, we have to act. When our experts warn us of negative economic growth, we have to act. Bill number 1 provides the government the means to take control of our local economy. It provides for an economy that is conducive to entrepreneurship and capital investment. Bill number 1 aims to get the government off the backs of small businesses to allow them to do what they do best, to provide them the means to succeed and in turn help us turn the tide in ensuring for positive economic growth. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I look forward to the support of my colleagues for Bill number 1 in support of our small and micro businesses and the economy of our island. Sitos Masi.
Hagumas Senator Lee, buen provecho. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? Anyone
I
wishing?
apologize, Speaker. I have 2 amendments that I'd like to proffer at this time.
At this time, Senator Lee, I will allow you that. Are they written and have they been passed out?
The clerks are currently making copies and we'll pass them
I
out
will
at
have
later
you go
dates.
ahead and speak on the amendment.
On the
And-
amendments, so the first one, Madam Speaker, is just to incorporate some of the feedback that we received from the Department of Revenue and Taxation. In their testimony during our public hearing on this bill, Department of Revenue and Tax Director Daphne Shimizu had recommended that we give them a time period in order to get to produce documents for filers to just prepare for this new class of taxpayers. So what we have done, actually in the first iteration of this bill, we had included an effective date for the next fiscal year, and I'm not sure why that was left out in the amended version, but this amendment would just be to move that language back in. And so it would be effective October 1st, 2019. So that gives, basically DRT asked for 60 days, and that gives them much more than 60 days should this bill pass and be signed by the governor. Sujus Masi.
Senator Lee, would that be Section 4 now? Do you have?
Madam Speaker, if we could just take a brief 1-minute recess.
So moved. We will take a moment recess. The legislature's back from recess. Senator Lee, on the amendment, everybody has a copy.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, for granting us the recess. So this initial amendment would be to page 2, line 8, to add a new section 2 to the bill and renumber the current section 2 to section 3. And so this new section 2 would be just detail the effective date, that this act shall be effective on October 1st, 2019.
Sijos Masi, Senator Lee. Anyone else? Senator Terlahi, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I realize the need for an effective date. I just want to clarify, because being effective on October 1, 2019 is the beginning of a new fiscal year, but these taxes are filed, they're filed monthly, but the bill says it's going to be based on the most recent year. So I would think that we want to start it off and, beginning in January of any year, or I'm not sure if the author could just maybe clarify that, because I'm trying to figure that out.
Sijos Masi, Senator Terlahi, I will pose that as a question. Senator Lee, would you like to yield to Senator Chalahi's inquiry?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The retiring speaker is correct. These small businesses are filing their taxes monthly. And so if there's another suggestion that might be proffered, this was just the language that was in the initial bill. It did not raise any red flags for DRT at that time. And so we were just replacing it given their feedback from the second public hearing. Sujos Masi.
Hagomas, Senator Lee. Senator Chalahi, does that answer your inquiry?
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Madam the Senator, the sponsor, for yielding. So the last sentence of the bill says that the exemption set forth above shall apply annually, commencing on the first day of the month of the new tax year, based on the gross annual income of a person during the most recent year. So commence on the first day of the month of the new tax year. Maybe we should specify that. I would suggest that legal just either clarify that this amendment is clear, or whether we need to make it based on a calendar year.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. Would you like to proffer an amendment there, Senator Chalahi? Not at this time. Senator Joseph Augustine, I will recognize you on the amendment.
Madam Speaker, in light of the comments, and on page 2, and exactly what the previous speaker is, that the commencing on the first day of the month of the new tax year. That being said, then I'd offer an amendment that the amendment that the author gave of October 1st be changed to January 1st, 2020, so that it is in fact in the beginning of the year, of the tax year.
On the amendment to Senator Lee's main amendment to change the year from October 1st, 2019 to 1 January 2020, or January 1st, 2020. Are there any objections? Are there any objections? No objections. The motion carries on the main amendment. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator Lee, you are still recognized on another amendment.
Yes, Sujos Masi, Madam Chair, and again, thank you to my colleagues. This second amendment would be to page 1, lines 2 through 12, to page 2, lines 1 through 7, to amend section 1 of the bill. So essentially what we're doing is, initially, as amended, this bill would affect the taxes levied under this article in excess of those generated from the first 3% on the first $50,000. And so what this amendment would do is expand that to the first $100,000. So again, the bracket of taxpayers that we are introducing in this measure is between people that, small businesses, micro businesses that make between $50,000 and $250,000 a year. And the initial proposal was to give them the tax break on the first $50,000 that they earn. Now, this amendment is attempting to expand that to the first $100,000. So the first $100,000 would be taxed at a rate of 3%, and that's what this amendment would do. And I think it's also important to note how doubling this benefit to small business would also double the economic benefit for Guam because of the multiplier effect that was discussed during our public hearing and noted by economists on our island. More dollars in the hands of small businesses will be multiplied in our economy. Sujos Masi.
On that amendment, are there anyone wishing to speak? If not, Senator Moylan, Senator Nelson, Senator Chalahi. Senator Moylan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Speaker, apologize. I rise in support of the second amendment that was just stated. I was also considering offering a similar amendment, but I do agree with the amendment to increase from 50,000 to 100,000. I think it's more beneficial for the small businesses as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cizos Masi, Senator Moylan. Vice Speaker Nelson, you're recognized on the amendment.
Cizos Masi, Madam Speaker, just a point of inquiry for the sponsor. What is the increased loss of taxes for moving it from 50,000 to 100,000?
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Regine Lee, would you like to yield to that inquiry?
Sure, Madam Speaker. And I thank my colleague for the question. So in the bill we had, or BBMR's fiscal note indicated small businesses with a gross income per annum in that bracket of 50,000 to 250,000. There are 2,200 small businesses that could claim this incentive. And an estimated loss of taxes at the current rate for $50,000 would be $100 or $1,000. So that's a total loss to the government coffers, to our general fund, of $2.2 million. If we double that, that would be double the amount. So instead of $2.2 million, it would be a total of $4.4 million.
Thank you, Senator Lee, and thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Therese Terlahi, you are recognized on the amendment. I like this one.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are, I guess, guessing based on the previous fiscal note that told us there was going to be an impact of about 2.2 million to the general fund revenues, that if we doubled that, it would have an impact of approximately 4 million on our general fund revenues. But I'm concerned about not getting a new fiscal note on this. It seems quite different than the bill that was put online for the fiscal team to analyze. And I'm concerned because although it just seems, of course, I was a small business owner. I am a small business owner, but that's what I did for a living for many, many years. And I availed of the Dave Santos amendment. It helped us, for business owners who were just starting out, especially, right? It was like an incubator program. But this expands this program to beyond those making $50,000 to $250,000. But it's right after we raise the GRT for every single business entity on Guam except for those who were exempt. And it's right after we put a hiring freeze, we put a travel freeze, we put an increment freeze, we did all kinds of drastic measures to ensure that the government would not spend over the amount we were going to receive even after the GRT increase. And there was a lot of debate at that time as to how that was going to affect families. But I guess my biggest point on the amendment, Madam Speaker, is that with a loss of $4 million, I want to be able to ask Revenue and Taxation, DOA, BBMR. So now we're talking about $4 million. How are we going to pay the matching funds that are needed for Medicaid? How are we going to come up with the millions of dollars that are needed for the CIP, the 2 urgent CIP projects at the hospital, including the roof and the electrical panel that they've said is their priority now? And so I guess, of course I would like to do the same, pass bills to make so many other people exempt from GRTs. But I feel like if we're not going to examine the whole, why did we raise the GRTs in the first place if we can now go back and exempt certain people? Why don't we just lower the whole GRT and see what that does for the economy? It reminds me of when Trump, what they did in Congress was say we were going to give corporations a tax break, and that money was going to circulate in our economy. But when Revenue and Taxation and DOA and BBMR came before us, they could not tell us the impacts of the Trump tax breaks to corporations. But we can see in our monthly reports that we are receiving, like on track to receive $20 million less in corporate taxes than we even predicted we would. And so I'm worried about these impacts, and I know, 2 million sounds small, maybe 4 million, I don't know, but I feel like, not when I'm looking at, if we could put $4 million in Medicaid right now, we could probably get $8 million in matching funds, if not more. And if we could put more, we get more money in medical care to people who are indigent. But I guess my point with the amendment is, we've already discussed the bill at the $2 million impact to the economy, and I would suggest that if we're going to change that to a $4 million impact, then the bill should receive another public hearing, or another bill to raise it up to this amount subsequent. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chalayer. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Marsh, you are recognized on the amendment.
Hungin, Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. So on the amendment, it changes one of the thresholds. In looking through the public comments that were provided, the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce had provided some recommendations, and indeed that was one of the recommendations in trying to create some parity. But they had also made the recommendation of limiting the threshold, so lowering it from 250,000 to 100,000 to 150,000. And when we had spoken about an amendment, I thought that was the direction we were going in. So if the author would yield to explaining why they did not follow that recommendation to just limit the upper threshold from 250,000 down to either 100,000, which would still be increasing the tax breaks, or the 150,000, which the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce recommended. I
will ask Senator Lee, would you like to answer that or get a further clarification on the inquiry? Senator Marsh Taitano, the author would like to ask you to further clarify your inquiry, your question.
As I mentioned, the Guam Chamber of Commerce had made two recommendations, so I can read them. They had some specific concerns about real property.
Tell my office to call them.
And so they said the suggested change is either to allow businesses of any type that earn $100,000 or less to be exempt from paying gross receipt taxes, or another recommendation was to lower the upper limit threshold to 100,000 to 150,000. So if I'm understanding their recommendation correctly, it was to take that 250,000 income threshold and to instead lower it to 100,000 or 150,000. So being that was one of the recommendations, I just wanted clarification or explanation as to why going in that direction and that recommendation wasn't taken.
Thank you, Senator Taitano. Senator Lee,
Sejus
would you like to answer
Madam
the question?
Speaker. Yes, and I think my colleagues who have risen in to question this amendment. I think it's really important to look at what happened in terms of the Trump tax cuts and our increase to the 5% that we have now to the BPT. It's really important in terms of economics to take a moment and think about how you want to approach this problem. We can approach this problem with an axe, where we can slash it right back down to 3% across the board. Yeah, that would make everybody really happy, but I think our economy would suffer. Or we could take this approach, which is taking a scalpel and we're slicing, doing micro cuts that would have a targeted impact to micro and small businesses. And let's just keep in mind that we're not living in a bubble. These small businesses aren't going to take their money and shove it in a mattress and keep it there forever. This money is going to be spent by our small businesses to acquire additional pieces of equipment, to acquire, perhaps give them that little bump up so maybe they can hire somebody or outsource some of their work, as I did when I was a small business owner. So I think it's really important to look at the totality of our economy and know that, yes, we might be taking a $4.4 million hit for the government of Guam, but that's not going away. That will be further circulated in our economy. And it's important to understand the economic multiplier that this amendment would address and would allow for us to have.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Taitsino, does that answer your inquiry?
To a degree. With those tax cuts that we are facing already, there is the possibility or the reality that we're going to be collecting fewer tax dollars, maybe even more so in this year. So I understand the logic that the author is promoting, but at the same time, we may be dealing with some lower taxes already being collected for this year, and so it may be a time of uncertainty to be bringing that in. And I would just also throw out there that while, yes, we do spend a lot of money here, we are also doing things like spending a lot more online and so forth, and so we can't necessarily guarantee to what degree that money is going to be spent here. So again, she's provided some reasoning, but I still have some qualifications about the analysis.
Agoma, Senator Taitsino. Anyone else on the main amendment? If Senator Moreland, you are recognized on the amendment by Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From my understanding, from what I'm hearing regarding our recent collections and taxes, that there seems to have been an increase in that line, so that's a good thing. I also want to express more about how it's important that we continue to help the small businesses, and any little percentage that we can will definitely help them. And if it means that they end up growing their businesses and they pay more taxes, these are the revenue providers that we need to help our general fund. The percentage of increase that was in the amendment basically gives them about $1,000 more. And we're hoping that they can put it to their business to help grow. I also want to point out, Madam Speaker, that these businesses that we're relying on, that we're hoping we can help, there's actually no guarantee that they will remain in business.
Senator, I'm going to take your comments right now as a point of information. I apologize. You did speak on the amendment, so I'll take that as a point of information.
Yes, Madam Speaker, point of information. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who has not spoken on the amendment? If not, Vice Speaker, do you have a point of inquiry or a point of information on this amendment?
No, I'd like to speak on the amendment. I asked a point of inquiry earlier.
Okay. Senator Nelson, you are recognized on the main amendment. Thank you.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm a little bit concerned about this amendment because initially we heard that we're about to lose $2.2 million in collections, and now we're doubling that amount to 4.4. A previous speaker mentioned that that maybe perhaps we can use it to address some of the Medicaid concerns, and we can double that money with matching federal funds. Another speaker mentioned that there's an economic multiplier impacting that could possibly assist our small businesses. But I don't know what that economic multiplier is. I don't know what the number is. I can say figuratively that if I owned a small business and I received this kind of exemption, that perhaps that I would hire more people, I would invest it back into my business, and that I would expand. But my concern also is the larger effect. I'm a little bit confused on where we stand with our economy now, because if we have enough money to create an exemption and lose roughly $4.4 million in collection, my concern is what about everyone else? And I fully support our small businesses. Through just looking at the bill on its face, I want to believe that it's a good bill, that it will help small businesses and not large corporations or people of wealth of over $10 million, that this will help those that, like Bonita Baby, this will help Mighty Purple, this will help this will help others that are starting out. But I'm confused because last year we raised the BPT to 5%. We're seeing it impact basic needs that every human being has to have to survive, which is food, which is the water, which is clothes, providing for their family. And so I'm concerned if we're exempting $4 million in taxes, what else are we going to be appropriating for? What else are we going to be exempting for while we continue to move the 5% BPT up? And if that concern can be assured to the people of Guam, that this is absolutely something in the best interest for everyone, then I would perhaps consider it. But right now, I'd have to object to this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sijus Masi, Vice Speaker Nelson. Anyone else on the main amendment? Anyone else on the main amendment? If not, I will ask Senator Lee to close on the amendment.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. I also just want to bring up that because the amendment to the previous amendment had passed, we have until January 2020 to really see the impact of that this potential bill would pose. I also just want to, in response to the retiring speaker, I think that letting people and letting small businesses keep more of their money, giving it back to them, it doesn't make this cash disappear. If we want to help the people of Guam, let's help them. Let's give them the money that they need to spend it in office supply stores and hardware stores, to really get this money back floating into our economy. And that's how we help people. That's how we help our small businesses to grow, to create additional jobs, and to really strengthen our economy. So I think that the people of Guam have a vested interest in this, and we want to continue to support them in the work that they do and give them the ability to decide for themselves. And that's exactly what Bill 1 would do. That's what this amendment, expanding that opportunity, would do. And that's certainly, I appreciate all of the support from my colleagues in supporting our small business community and working to really stabilize and strengthen our economy. Thank you.
Si Zeus Masi,
Point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker.
please state your point of personal privilege, Vice Speaker.
I am not saying that that I don't want to help the economy. I am not saying that there's no possibility that the investments will happen. What I'm saying is that there's no definitive accountability that that is exactly how the money will be moved within the economy. And the point of information,
Please state the point.
the general fund is funded off of the revenues of the people of Guam. Now we are creating an exemption that's going to forgive $4 million, which will cut the revenue from the general fund by $4 million. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Colleagues, there has been an objection to this amendment. So all those wishing to support the Regine Bisco-Lee amendment, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. On the main motion, are there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Lee, you may close. Senator Torres, you are recognized. Those who spoke on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, Bill 1-35. And while there are a lot of concerns about how much we are willing to give up in terms of tax dollars, as we're all very sensitive to tax increases, I think what we have to be very cognizant about is that we now have a resurgence of interest in our community in taking the risk and going into business. One of the pillars of Guam, we always discuss the two main pillars as being the military and tourism, but truly the health of an economy is always shouldered by the small business owner. And as much as we can incentivize a small business owner to thrive or to take the risks and to actually see through that their businesses thrive, we have to afford them the same sort of incentives that we tend to afford the larger investors. And so I appreciate this new mindset in focusing on the small business owner, which really is the future of Guam. And when you think also about this spirit of entrepreneurship that has been fostered by GUMA and Small Business Development Center, by the Chamber of Commerce, by the Women's Chamber of Commerce, we now see a resurgence in confidence in our people to take it upon themselves to make a living on their own terms. I find that very reassuring. I find that, a good indicator that Guam can move forward in terms of taking care of itself, meeting its needs and its demands, but enabling the people to have control of their lives and to prosper on their own terms. So it's for that reason that I support this bill, and I thank the author and the co-sponsors for driving this measure. Sizus Maasi.
Thank you so much, Senator Torres. On the main motion, ladies and gentlemen, it's 11:51. I will address Senator Terlahi. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? So I have Senator Therese Terlahi, then Senator Sabina Perez, and then Senator Will Castro. We will go ahead and dispose before we take recess. Senator Therese Terlahi, you are recognized. On the main motion.
Madam Speaker,
Yes, Senators.
If it's not just comments, but there's going to be amendments, then I just request that we recess for lunch, and then whatever amendment, then we'll come back until 2 o'clock.
We are in recess to 2 p.m.